Oh, well, thank you very, very much. I'm really honored to be here and to give my heartfelt congratulations to the 129 of you who received your PhDs today. Congratulations, just wonderful. I also want to acknowledge all of the mentors that showed up to do the hooding. Some of you need some practice. I also want to give a special thanks to the Harvard Medical School Office for Graduate Education for its tireless efforts on your behalf, and all of the program leaders who are seated here in front of you who are tirelessly dedicated to your education, but also all of the family and friends and others who have supported you, because you've needed an enormous amount of support for your outstanding achievements. Now, earning a PhD is clearly a pinnacle milestone accomplishment. Each of you is now an established member of a scholarly lineage that stretches back hundreds of years. And just as you may look back with reverence and gratitude to the scholars who came before you, the scientists who follow in your footsteps are going to be looking to you as their academic forebears. Now, consider this. Even if your intellectual descendants don't know your name, they will intuitively understand that you built something for them, that you established a framework for understanding your corner of biology, and that you gifted them new perspectives for peering into the unknown. Your contributions, therefore, will contribute to history. Now, of course, history is not made solely of its own accord. It is the consequence of many small decisions made by you and your scientific colleagues every day. It's a reflection of the quality of attention given to a problem and to persons. In science, the attention that we give trainees can determine their success and their commitment to carry forward the legacy of scientific scholarship. This is the power of mentorship. Just as doctors pledge to treat the patient in front of them with dignity and respect, scientists must work to bring out the absolute best in their mentees. Now, some of you will know that my own doctoral advisor, David Baltimore, passed away last fall. David was a preeminent scientist, but also a legendary mentor. By the time I met him while training in his lab at the Whitehead Institute, he'd already won the Nobel Prize 7 years before at the age of 37. His discoveries led to major breakthroughs in immunology and cancer biology, but David was, at heart, a virologist. In his 1975 Nobel lecture, David remarked that a virologist is among the luckiest of biologists because he can see into his chosen pet down to the details of all of its molecules. Now, I love this quote, not merely because it's a humorous description of a virus, but it also spoke to David's style of mentorship. In many ways, we were all his chosen pets, and he could read deeply into all of our weaknesses and insecurities, and indeed, he called us out on our shortcomings. The attention he gave us was measured and comprehensive, something we might today label tough love. David had a very clear sense of what I and his other mentees needed in order to learn, grow, and achieve. Ever since David's death last September, I've been reflecting on what made his mentorship so influential, and I've distilled it to 3 key lessons that I want to share with you all today. I hope you'll heed these lessons and pass them on to the next generation when the time comes. Now, first, mentorship is a lifelong, active, and evolving pursuit. In many ways, I was closer to David in my last years of knowing him than I was during my graduate student years. David was a constant presence in my life, having advised me on major career decisions, including this deanship. Not all of his advice was good, necessarily. He attended my wedding. During our final conversation in his hospital room, He gave me feedback on my latest publication. And that feedback I treasure because it contained some of the last traces of his great mind. And there he was, transmitting it to me in his waning moments. We should all be so lucky to have a mentor who consistently shows up for us, who passes down accumulated wisdom until the very end. Graduate science is a human endeavor, so do not forget to nurture the relationships you have with the people who've been part of your story. And because it's impossible to know the arc of a relationship ahead of time, treat every relationship, whether with a mentor or a mentee or a colleague, treat it as though it could last a lifetime. Have reverence for your mentors and carry forward your obligation to mentor others. My second mentorship lesson, the best mentors create independent thinkers who can thrive in a shared intellectual space. For David Baltimore, mentorship meant giving trainees an unusually long leash, trusting them, often before they trusted themselves, to guide their own creative thought process and map out a long-term vision for their research. Now, this instilled independence and strategic planning skills in young scientists, a style of mentoring that he sometimes called benign neglect. I'm not kidding, yeah. One of David's mentees, writing in a memorial to David, recalled arriving for his postdoc, his second day ever in the United States, and being told by David to draft an R01 grant application for him on day one. No onboarding, no supervision. He just had to do it, and he could do it. Only David could convey that loud yet unspoken message. Now, I recall, not on one of my best days in graduate school, feeling horribly down one day and seeking some solace in David's office. I groaned that I was feeling very unproductive, was feeling inadequate, how inadequate I felt next to all the postdocs like Shiv Pillai, who was in the lab at the time, who were so skilled and effective. Rather than soothing me and reassuring me that I too would be as productive as all the postdocs one day, David chided me and exclaimed that in his experience, his graduate students were often more impactful than his postdocs, and that I should get back to work. It sounds harsh, but this approach produced remarkable outcomes in his trainees. It fostered confidence, agency, and the ability to think boldly. A case in point, another mentee of David's was Victor Ambros, who worked on the polio virus in the 1990s, and as you likely know, went on to win the Nobel Prize in 2024 alongside Gary Ruvkin for their discovery of microRNAs. Now, you don't just win a Nobel Prize by following someone else's instructions. You win a Nobel Prize by refusing to believe that you're incapable of producing original, deeply impactful work. David's mentorship gave his mentees that level of measured, disciplined self-assurance. Now, underlying his approach was also a foundational belief about how science should function. The best labs, David showed, are not rigid hierarchies, but intellectual gathering spaces where ideas move freely. In these types of labs, mentors are more like choreographers. They help orchestrate how dancers move, but more importantly, they inspire the dancers' confidence, creativity, and synchrony. The dancers aren't marionettes. It's their own bodies that are doing the work and making artistic decisions. Third, mentorship is a responsibility. In some ways, of course, this idea encompasses the other two. David Baltimore's work was fueled by the notion that science and scientists should serve, that the privilege of performing science carried with it a responsibility to give back. While his Nobel Prize-winning discovery of the reverse transcriptase enzyme served as the first critical target for antiretroviral drugs to fight AIDS, David believed strongly that it was the responsibility a virologist to study AIDS. In the 80s, he pushed his colleagues and the government to mount a more robust scientific and therapeutic response to the disease, even when the issue had become terribly politicized. Now, most of you know all too well what a polarized environment looks like, but you may not be able to fully appreciate the nature of the AIDS epidemic. Imagine an epidemic with same level of fear and uncertainty as the COVID-19 pandemic, but stretched out over years of ineffective treatments and pernicious stigma. Those were the conditions under which David was working. But through it all, he was uncompromising about scientists' responsibility to truth, to their colleagues, to society, and indeed to the world. His advisory activities extended to China, where he traveled frequently to engage with students and faculty, enable collaborative science, and assist in shaping modern Chinese research centers. For David, the accrual of knowledge was not a zero-sum game. Part of his responsibility, he felt, was not to hoard knowledge, but to share it. Any good mentor will do the same on an individual level. David just happened to take his mentorship across seas and across continents. David used to say that he grew up during the last hurrah of the era of observation. His career marked the transition to the era of molecular mechanism and explanation. I'd argue that for several decades now, we've been in the subsequent era, the era of responsibility. As artificial intelligence, gene editing, cell therapies become more advanced, we're asking not just what the body is doing mechanistically, but how and if we should manipulate it. David's adherence to responsibility and accountability to the future are more relevant now than ever before. So, graduates, to my mind, David Baltimore was the epitome of excellence in mentorship. Now, I don't want to leave you with the misimpression that he wasn't also nurturing, warm, and caring. He was. But like any good mentor, he did not want his skills to end with him. All of you have the potential to be exemplary mentors. And you can start by remembering the 3 lessons that I learned from David. Mentorship is a lifelong, active, and evolving pursuit. Mentorship creates independent thinkers who can thrive in a shared intellectual space. And above all, mentorship is a responsibility. Now, these 3 lessons encapsulate mentorship as I have experienced it, especially in an academic context that has been fraught with uncertainties over the past year or so. One of the best things you can do for yourself is determine what kind of mentor under these conditions that you want to be. It's all the more important now. This is within your control. It's also one of the best tools that you all have to create a better tomorrow. So thank you again. Congratulations again to all of you graduating, all of the hard work that's gone into this remarkable achievement. Enjoy this day. Enjoy the celebrations.